for our culture today. Be still. We're going to be talking about that a little bit today as we continue our journey through some of the Psalms. And the way that we're looking at these is, what does abiding in Jesus look like when life is hard? What does it look like? How do you do it? It's easy to abide in Jesus when things are going well. But what does it look like when things are hard? When we're angry or sad or depressed or feeling rebellious or stressed and anxious, fearful, or when we're just confused or feeling alone. What does it look like? Thankfully, the book of Psalms has some answers for us. Not in scripted notes or nice platitudes, but in the raw and candid look through the eyes of people like David who've been there and done that. The last 3 weeks, this is week 4, the last 3 weeks we've looked at how do we abide in Jesus when we feel alone? And then how do we abide in Jesus when we're going through a season of feeling judged and betrayed? And last week we looked at what does it look like to abide in Jesus when we're anxious, when we're worrying, when we don't know the way ahead. And today we're going to look at what does it look like to abide in Jesus when we're angry. Angry. And there's the anger that we have that is like explosive. Everybody knows we're angry. And then there's the anger that is just kind of simmering in here. And it's just always there. And other people might not even know it's there, or you might not even know it's there, but it's there just ready to erupt. So what does it look like to abide in Jesus when we're angry? We'll get to that in a moment, but before we do, would you take a moment and pray on your own? Go to Jesus and ask him to open your eyes, your mind, your ears, your heart this morning. Amen. Well, we're going to begin this morning. We're going to be looking at Psalm 37 today, Psalm 37, and it's a longer psalm, so we're not going to look at the entire psalm. We're really going to focus in on the first 9 verses of the psalm. So I want to look at the superscription first. Again, the superscription is that little line that gives us some details about the psalm that's before verse 1. And this time it only gives us 2 words, of David. Of David. So what we know of this psalm is that David wrote it. But thankfully, a little bit later on in the psalm, we get one other piece of context. So verse 25 in Psalm 37, David says, I have been young and now I am old. So the context of when he's writing this psalm is when he's old. After he's been there and done that. He's gone through the gambit of life and of life's struggles. And David had some pretty big struggles. some pretty big highs, some pretty big lows. And so now David is writing out of his experience, out of his wisdom. He's letting us know some wisdom about life and how to handle life. And at the beginning of this psalm, he wants us to understand how to handle anger. Because I imagine for David, and particularly those lows that he experienced in his life, he had some anger that he had to work through. He knows from experience what it feels like to be angry. And he's probably made some mistakes in this area. I know he made mistakes in this area. And now he's old, and he's writing out of his experience and wisdom and saying, this is how you handle anger. This is what it looks like. And this is really important because the time to settle how you're going to deal with anger is not when you're in the midst of anger. Y'all understand that, right? The time to settle and figure out how you're going to deal with anger in your life is not when you're in the midst of being angry, because that's just not going to work. You're in the feeling, and if you don't already have a plan for how you're going to handle that anger, you're going to handle it poorly. That's the way it goes. And so David, in his wisdom of having been there and done that, says you need to have a plan, and he's going to give us a plan for how to handle anger and what that looks like. So let's dive right into verse 1 and 2. David says, "Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb." So this is the first negative command. We're going to get to some positive commands in the passage, but this is the negative command in the passage, do not. And what he's saying here is do not fret. Do not fret. Now that word fret is an interesting word, isn't it? Fret. Try to say that real quick. Fret. Fret. Come on, say it. Fret. Fret. Isn't that an odd word? Fret. Sometimes you say these words out loud and you're like, that's kind of a strange word. Fret. Well, this word in the Hebrew, it means to burn. It means to be kindled, to glow, to grow warm. And it's often used in the Bible specifically to describe anger. So I want to answer a question first before we get to how to handle anger. I want to ask the question, is it wrong to be angry? Is it wrong to be angry? Well, the answer to that question is it depends. It depends. It depends on what you're angry about, on how you choose to express that anger, and how long you choose to carry that anger. The reality is we get angry over a whole host of things, right? We get angry over injustice. We get angry over injustice in the world. You know, we see some things happening. We see some Middle Eastern countries that are killing Christians, and it's unjust, and there's something that builds in us, that should build in us, that just says, no, this is not the way it should be. And anger toward that is okay. But we get angry over all kinds of injustices, at least I do. For instance, I think I've talked about before, I get angry over the injustice that one of our cats, and how that cat treats the other one of our cats. So we have 4 cats, 1 mom, and 3 kids, and they all got along so well for a while, and then all of a sudden there was a fight one night, and now one of the daughters decides she hates her mom and picks on her And occasionally, she will wait, and if she sees the mom in the living room having a nice lay down, having a nice time, I could see it in her eyes. She's like, no, I can't stand for that. She needs to feel fear. And she will run at her and try to scare her and bully her. And that just makes me boil. It just makes me boil. I can't stand it. And so I'll go, get out of here, get out of here. And it just frustrates me. I don't like injustice, even if it's a cat and how a cat treats another cat. I don't like that. But we get angry over all kinds of things. Sure, injustice. But we get angry sometimes if our team loses, right? Oh, I can't believe they lost. Especially if our team loses and we feel like it was the referee's fault, that it was a bad call. Then it's like, oh, I can't believe that referee. I was watching a video a couple of weeks ago, and in this video, it was like a little league baseball game, and the referee made a questionable call, and the coach came out and got into the ref's face, and then the coach started hitting the ref. It's like, are you serious? This is a little league game. Control your anger. I mean, come on. What is going on here? That, by the way, is not okay anger. We get angry when our plans get derailed. We get angry when we're driving in the car and someone slips right in front of us and cuts us off. And we want to give that person a nice conversation. They can't hear you. And yet we have the conversation anyway, right? We get angry over all kinds of things. Here's the reality. Not all anger is equal. Not all anger is equal. Not all anger is justified. But clearly, not all anger is sin. Not all anger is sin. Why do we know that? Because Jesus got angry on a few occasions. I want to look at one of those occasions real quick. Mark chapter 3, verse 5. Let me set it up before I read the verse. It's the Sabbath. And there's this guy that needs to be healed. And this is a setup. The teachers of the law, the Pharisees, have brought this guy in, put them where he knows Jesus is going to be because they want to see if Jesus is going to break the law by healing on the Sabbath. And so this is what happens. And he, that's Jesus, looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart, and said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. Jesus was furious with these Pharisees and teachers of the law, that they didn't understand the law, that they were trying to set him up, that they were doing all of this. He was angry. And Jesus did not sin. So clearly, not all anger is sin. In fact, Paul tells us as much in Ephesians chapter 4. Paul says, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger and give no opportunity to the devil. Now, we can learn three quick things from that passage. Number one, anger is not always sinful. Anger is not always sinful. Number two, but if you continue to be angry, it will become sinful. Number three, if we remain angry, the devil will see that as an opportunity to open a door into your heart. So this is a tricky discussion because sometimes anger is okay, but you can't continue in that anger because it will lead to sin. And this is where fretting comes in. I want to get back to that weird word, fret. I want you to imagine a campfire. I want you to imagine two separate campfires, and I've had both. One where, I'm trying to light it, and so I'm taking the easy route. I'm putting all kinds of paper in there, and then maybe I even get some lighter fluid or something and pour it on, and it's like, right? Like huge, huge fire. And then 5 minutes later, it's gone. It's just gone. And it's like, oh man, I really thought that was going to get going. And then you got the fire that you do it the right way, and you're making it, and it starts out small, and it just starts burning and burning and burning. And it's not necessarily this gigantic, out of control, huge fire, but it stays there a while, and it gets hot. And then you take your hot dogs or your marshmallows, and you don't stick them right in the fire. That's error 101 in campfires. Now, you put it above the coals because that's the hottest place. Those little coals that don't even look sometimes like they're burning. They're just kind of red. They don't have the flames coming out of them. But that's where it's really, really, really hot. And that's where you cook your food. Fretting is anger that you don't let go of. You just keep thinking about it. You just keep stewing over it, letting it grow hotter and hotter and hotter inside of you until it begins to consume you. And soon, anger becomes bitterness and burns anyone that happens to be in the vicinity because it's burning so hot. Now, for David, the question that he's specifically looking at in this psalm in regards to anger is, why do bad people seem to get whatever they want? Why do bad people seem to succeed and good people don't? That just makes me mad. That's not just, right? And thousands of years later, aren't we still asking that same question? Why does it seem so often that these wicked, bad people that have bad morals, that are just bad, they seem to succeed? They seem to have whatever they want. They seem to have the riches and the things that they want in life. And those who are good seem to struggle and not have those things. Why is that? And the temptation is, if you let that question stew enough and you become angrier and angrier, the temptation that the devil then puts inside of you is, well, why don't you just be like them? Just be like them. Just do what they do, and you can have what they have. Now, I want to look at the very end of the passage that we're looking at. We're looking at Psalm 37, verses 1 through 9, and this is built in several different stanzas. The first stanza is 1 through 9, and so he starts at the beginning, and then he comes back to it at the end. So I want to look at that. End of verse 7 into verse 8. He says, "Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself. It tends only to evil." Don't you like that? Fret not yourself. Say that to yourself 5 times fast. Fret not yourself. When we fret, again, we stew in anger. And even if that anger is justified, i.e., we're angry over unjust circumstances, over hurtful comments against us or someone else, or as David is saying here in the context of the passage, that wicked people seem to prosper and good people seem to suffer, even if it's justified reasons, if we stew in our anger, and let it grow hotter and hotter, it tends to lead us into sin, into destruction. So David's advice and his command as an older and wiser, been there and done that man of God, is that he expands on his fret not with refrain from anger, forsake wrath. Okay, that's all good and fine. But how do you do that? What does that look like? How do we dump water on the burning coals of our anger? How do we do that? The answer is by abiding in Jesus. By abiding in Jesus. Now, David is not going to use that word abiding here in the psalm, but he gives us 4 positive commands that are all aspects of abiding in Jesus. So I want to walk through those 4 positive commands that he says, when you're angry, when you know that you're fretting and it's in your mind and you can't get it out and it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter, what do? You do these 4 things. Number 1, let's go to verse 3. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and, where are you going? Go back. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. So the first command is to trust. If you're going to stop fretting, stewing in anger, you have to choose to trust God. That word trust means to be confident in, to believe wholly and indisputably that God is who he says he is and does what he says he will do. That's trust. That God is who he says he is, and he will do what he says he will do. That you confidently believe that. Well, again, that's easy to do when life is going your way. But when it's hard, when you're hurt, when you look at the world and think, why doesn't God do something? Why did he allow that? Why is this happening? Then it's not so easy. You see, trusting in Jesus means that you trust him with the injustice. You trust him with the hurt. Trusting in him means that you trust him with the relationship if it happens to be a conflict with another person. Trusting in him means that you trust him with and in the circumstance that you're in. That he will be your advocate and he will see you through. Anger, especially fretting, usually leads us to rashly take action. And that could be with our words, just shouting something out in anger, or with our actions, doing something. And folks, that never ends well. I could say that from experience. And I bet you can too. When we choose to respond rashly as we're fretting, it does not end well. But when we choose to trust in the Lord to lead us and to believe that he's going to take care of this situation, of this relationship, of this issue, then things begin to unravel. Now for the Jews, this was what was happening in the context of the times back then. The faithful were being taken advantage of. They were poor in the promised land. And while the wicked succeeded at every turn, the temptation was for the faithful to just say, see you later, and leave the promised land and get out of town. Leave. That's what a lot of them felt like doing in their anger. They just wanted to pick up and leave. And David said, no, 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 no. Stay. Stay in the promised land. Stay. And just trust God that in the end, he will take care of you and he will deal with the wicked. That God is just. He is. You can trust him. So the key to trusting God is knowing him. The key to trusting God is knowing him. You can't trust someone that you don't know well. And that is why trust is a huge part of abiding. Because abiding is all about remaining in him, getting to know him, making your home in him. And the more we do that, the more we see who he is and what he's like, that he is faithful, that he is true, that he is good, that he does love us. The more we come to realize that and see that, the more we trust him. The more we trust him, and the more we're able to trust him with the hard stuff instead of rashly taking it on ourselves. But that's not all we're to do. We're to trust God, but we're also to delight in him. Verse 4 says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. So command number 1 is to trust. The second command is to delight. Delight yourself in the Lord. That word delight means to be merry. It means to be completely relaxed by and in something. I want you to hear that. To delight in means to be completely relaxed in something and by something. And you can only do that when you trust. You know, sometimes when you're really tense, you know, like I'm really tense and my neck starts hurting, my back starts hurting, it's like, honey, can you give me a back rub? Can you just do something? And sure, and she'll start putting her fingers in, and then inevitably she says these words, relax. Relax. I'm trying. And I have to consciously think about relaxing. It's not something that comes naturally. I have to make a choice that, you know what, I can trust her. She's not going to kill me, although that's happened almost a few times. But no, I can trust her, and I can choose to relax so that she can dig in a little bit. And that's that word delight, to be completely relaxed in and relaxed by, to find your joy in. And who are we to be delighting in? The Lord, Jesus. Jesus. What David is doing here is he's saying, I want you to change your focus. You are fretting over this thing, which means you're focused on it. It's in your mind. It's going in your mind over and over and over. You're replaying it over and over and over, and you're getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And David is saying, you need to change your focus. Stop thinking about this and turn your attention on the Lord. Relax. Can you just relax in Jesus? Let him give you that back rub that you need. Let him do that. Relax. Let him do it. And when we do that, David says, he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, what does that mean? This is not the prosperity gospel, guys. God is not saying in this passage, hey, if you turn your attention to me, I'll give you whatever you ask for. Oh, you want that sailboat? Oh, you want... No, he's not saying that. That's not what this passage means. if we're delighting in the Lord, if we make the Lord our joy, what we want the most, God is saying, I'll do it. I'll give you myself. I'll give you myself. I will give you the desires of your heart. But if you are delighting in the Lord, the desire of your heart is Him. Him. And He says, I'll do it. I'll give you myself. I'll let you see who I am. I will spend time with you. You can be relaxed in my presence. So we choose to trust God, and then we dive into our relationship with Him. We delight in Him. And then the next step is to commit our ways to Him. Verses 5 and 6, commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. That word commit is another really interesting word. It literally means to roll off your burden. Let me say that again. The word commit in the Hebrew here literally means to roll off your burden. Commit your ways. Roll off your ways. Well, what are our ways? He's talking about your feelings, the issue itself, the person that you're dealing with, whatever it is. He says, roll it off. Let it roll off of you, not into a nebulous nowhere, but let it roll off of you to your Savior, to Him. Give it to Him. You see, delighting in Jesus, what we just talked about, doesn't mean that the problem, it doesn't mean that the hurt, that the injustice has just gone away. Delighting in Jesus means that our perspective has changed. And now that we're focusing on Jesus, we can and should be honest and communicate to Him our hurts and our anger and our frustrations, and then surrender them over to Him. Let them roll off of you onto Him. To the one we're trusting, to the one who understands, to the one who is able to help us, and to the one who loves us more than anyone else ever could. I want to challenge you this morning, if there's something in your life, if there is a circumstance or a relationship that you are not able to surrender over to Jesus, I want you to hear this. Jesus doesn't condemn you for that, but He is calling you deeper into relationship with Himself. He's inviting you to fully abide, to learn to trust Him and delight in Him. Because you can't surrender hard things in your life if you aren't fully delighting in Him. And you can't fully delight in Him if you're not trusting Him. So the place to start isn't surrender. If that's where you start, you will fail every time. The place to start is getting to know Him, delighting in Him, learning to trust Him, and then you're able to surrender more and more over to Him. But that's not where we end. We have one more step. Top of verse 7 says, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him." Told you at the beginning we would get to those words, be still. Here it is. This is at the end of David's advice in his elder years of having been there, done that, dealing with anger in his life. He says, look, folks, you need to learn to trust God. You need to learn to delight in Him and then roll off all of your burdens onto Him, all the things that you're angry about, just roll it off onto Him. And then be still and wait. You see, being still is the opposite of fretting. It's not talking about a stillness of action, of living. That's not what he's talking about. We know that because in verse 3, he told us to do good, to do something. So he's not talking about being still in terms of doing nothing. He's talking about a stillness, a peace in your mind and in your heart. You see, anger and fretting isn't still. It wrestles and it simmers with anger, constantly thinking about the situation, telling other people about the situation, letting it play in our minds over and over and over again. It wants to burn. Anger wants to burn hotter and hotter and hotter inside of you, and will, if you let it, if you give the devil an opportunity, he will take advantage of it, and he'll keep it burning. But we're commanded here to be still and then to wait. I talked about that word wait last week. It means, again, to wait with expectation that God is going to move and to be ready for when he does. But in order to do that, if you are waiting for God to move and to be ready when he does, it means that you have to listen and hear when he moves. And that's where being still comes in. You can only hear God when you're still. When you cease the fretting in your mind of letting it go over and over and over and over again and replaying the scene, whatever it is that made you angry, letting it go over and over and over. We just do that. We just like watching a movie and we just keep pushing play over and over and over. It's like when the girls were little and they wanted to watch The Little Mermaid again and then again and then again and then again. It's like over and over and over and over. And David's saying here, no, be still. Don't play it anymore. Be still. You can't hear God when this is just going nonstop. Let that go. How do you let that go? By trusting in God, delighting in him, and then rolling those things off of you onto him, giving him your burdens, your concerns, your anger, your feelings. And then you can be still. Listen and wait. And when that happens, God gives a promise to the Israelites here in this passage. He says in verse 9, "For the evildoers will be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land." Now, for the Jews, this was a promise that the faithful Jews would inherit the land and that the unjust would be dealt with. That was a promise for them. That's not a promise for you or for me. So, what can we take from this? God hasn't promised to specifically tie into a nice bow and solve everything about whatever it is you're angry about. But is just. He always has been. He is. He always will be. It's who he is. And we can trust him to be just. That God will take care of you, that he will minister to you, that he will be beside you, and that he will move in the situation in his perfect timing, because that's who he is. And we can trust that and believe that and move forward with that. So my question for you as we wrap up this morning, do you trust him? Do you trust him? Learn to trust him more. Do you delight in Jesus? Learn to delight in him more. Have you committed your ways to him? Learn to give him more. And have you learned to be still and to wait? Continue to practice. And if we have those things in our mind, if we learn to do those things on those bad days when life is hard and anger surfaces, you will know how to deal with that anger so that it does not become fretting and lead you into sin. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you. Thank you for speaking into this in your word, because sometimes I get angry. And Lord, I pray that you would help me to continue to work on trusting you and delighting in you and committing my ways to you and to being still and waiting. Lord, continue to work in all of our lives in this so that we can be angry at the right things and yet have it not lead to sin, to fretting. And when that happens, then the people around us will look in and they will see something different. And they'll want to know what that difference is. And it will be all because we've learned to abide in you. I thank you and praise you and ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for being here this morning. I know we're a smaller group here, summer in July, but I trust that God had this word, this passage, this moment for each one of you. That's why you're here. And that you will practice what this psalm teaches. I appreciate all of you, love all of you. I pray and trust that the Lord will cause his face to shine upon you and will bless you, and that we will gather back together. We're taking a little bit of a break from this series starting next Sunday, just to let you know. And we're going to have some special speakers, so I get a little bit of time off. I will be here, and I'll continue to lead the service and lead worship, but there'll be some other people speaking. So next Sunday, Dean Carlo will be here and will give us his yearly update on the youth ministry and what's going on there and how we can